All right, so welcome again to the Week 8 Ask Us Anything session, the AUA sessions, the last that we're going to do for this MOOC. And I just want to start it off by saying this has been a fantastic experience for all of us, and we're actually going to talk about that, our experience with this a little bit more. But I want to start and end this session by thanking all of you that were involved, and all the students and learners that were involved in this. You guys really made this an exciting experience for us. So again, as we've done every week, we're going to talk about topics that have come up in the week in the discussion forums and respond to some of the questions and ideas that have come up. And as the course has been ending, lots of questions have been about the future, what the future holds for research, what the future holds for the MOOC, and some reflections on how the course went, how the experience has been for everybody. And so I think I want to start it off with the science side and what we as a group think is the future of this science, both in terms of the exciting and engaging questions for the basic science of infectious disease and parasitic organisms, as well as what the important questions are for the broader public health community, how these questions can be applied to help and change the world around us. So I'll put that out there and see what you guys think are the most exciting and engaging scientific questions.
Yeah, I can take a stab at this because I think you folks are bringing some science, some experience, some expertise to deal with some of the challenges we'll have, and that is what I'll just call big data. So the course has been based very much on us understanding an organism. We have a way to determine whether disease is caused. We have tests that tell us whether individuals are infected, and something about how things spread through the population. And we made some points that when we study the infection process and the disease process, we may only be looking at the tip of the iceberg. And we now have, or we will certainly have in the next decade, means to just comprehensively look at the pathogen or the microbiota, if you will, commensal and potentially pathogenic in anybody, in any animal. Okay, that's a potential, but that's a tremendous amount of data. And so the question, and of course Marcel is already beginning to use social media to understand responses through tweets and things, and whether or not that information can be of any value in determining if there's disease. And so we're having this, I won't call it a clash, it's going to be an interesting integration, I think, of increased diagnostic ability and increased ability for the individuals to indicate whether or not they're sick. How do we bring this together? That's a tremendous challenge. I think it's going to be really exciting.
Don't you think it's so interesting, the variation that we have?
Yeah.
So if you have something like measles, you might disagree with me here, but if you have something like measles, it might be a set infectious period and it might be, classic symptoms and things. But then you look at other diseases. You look at diseases like Lyme disease, and there we're not even really sure what the disease characteristics are. If we find Borrelia in you, we know it's important. But some people can really suffer hugely from it. That's one of your diseases. You've had Borrelia. So it really...
We probably all have.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. Some of us suffer greatly, some of us don't.
Right.
Is that because of your genetic differences? Is that because of the integral of all your past infections? Or is it because this is actually a polymicrobial infection? So I think the future is going to look very much more at the whole interaction of microbes within you and how that influences that variation. So if you get something like Lyme disease, it's going to be severe if you also have a virus infection, or if you also have this infection, or your gut microbiome is like this.
Or a particular genetic makeup.
And so this came up a little bit in one of the earlier Ask Us Anything discussions about this powerful capacity we now have for discovery. We can actually go out and start looking broadly for microorganisms, for things that we didn't, before we could only see the things that we knew to look for. And for the most part, we only knew to look for things that caused disease because that was where our focus was. And now we have this capacity to search for for anything that has the signal of being a virus, or we can search for everything that's in a gram of seawater, and I think what we're seeing as a consequence of that is that the pathogenic lifestyle is only the tip of the iceberg of the microbial community and the world of microorganisms that's out there. And what's exciting to me about that is it's requiring that we now do a lot more classical natural history, understanding what it is about these organisms. So we use these new technological advances to do discovery.
Yeah.
But once we've discovered things, now we have to explain and understand the natural history that surrounds that. And you brought up the boring case of measles. So we had a meeting here, just last month where we had some of the world's experts on all the measles related viruses that are out there, and we heard stories about measles-like viruses that are in some of the rarest whales that exist in the world. And so this is a virus that's only been found in some of the rarest whales. That looks like measles, a pathogen that we know is highly transmissible, only exists in huge populations, right? So it completely turns on its head the classic assumptions that we would make about viruses that live in that family.
So the whole viral discovery push at the moment is really quite daunting, I think. So my postdoc, who's studying mice, and the white-footed mice that you find everywhere in Northeast America, and they're probably in your basement at this very moment. And he just did some viral discovery, and he came up with 7 new viruses to science that are in these mice. And you're being exposed to those probably, because there are mice droppings everywhere in my house. Well, not everywhere. There's in the basement of my house, but there are mice droppings everywhere. And you could probably be exposed to these all the time. So how important are those?
Yeah.
Quite frightening. Oh, it keeps us in a job. We've got a lot of work to do.
Well, and I guess the other really interesting thing that speaks to is that we may, given Mary's perspective, it'd be really interesting to see. So a lot of these viruses clearly don't cause any sickness in us, because we would have known it. We would be very sick with some horrible disease.
But not necessarily. That morning you got up and just didn't feel good for the first part. It wasn't just because you didn't have your cup of coffee.
And because of the interactions.
But it would be interesting to know actually how many of these new viruses that we're now discovering actually has the ability to colonize us. Maybe many of them don't. But maybe a lot of them actually do. They kind of creep in, and for whatever reason they don't cause too much damage. They don't upset our immune system. They don't raise any red flags, and so it'd be interesting to know truly the amount of viral diversity and bacterial diversity that we are challenged with, given all of these viruses we know nothing about.
So I think one of the other things that we're getting from these large-scale surveys and all this discovery is a massive description of the communities of microorganisms that are out there. We're doing a lot of great description, right? What's out there? How many things are out there? How variable are they? But what we're lacking, what I think is one of the exciting next steps, is trying to understand the mechanisms. How are those communities formed and changed? Why are some resilient? Why are some disturbable? The field of community ecology has studied these things for decades in terms of how are grasslands formed? Why do forests follow a predictable succession? Thank you. And we haven't quite gotten to that point yet in infectious diseases. We know that all of us are bags of microorganisms, but we don't quite know how we got to be that way. We know that if you change the community of microorganisms, some of us will get sick and some of us will get better. And we know that if we change them in certain ways, we can make these things happen. But we don't yet understand the mechanisms. We don't understand the interactions that are causing this and making us what we are.
So I still think a big challenge out there is the whole issue of transmission. I mean, much of the course was about epidemiology. It's about the transmission of one pathogen to the next pathogen. And in some infections, we can actually identify when it occurs or some likelihood of it actually taking place. But we can't observe transmission events very easily. And yet, that is what public health is all about. That is, I think, the basic basis of what we're all really interested in. So wouldn't it be great to know who it was who infected you with the flu, when it occurred, why did it occur? That trying to understand those transmission processes. And I think the way federal funding has been set up has not been set up in a way to help us understand that. So much of what NIH does is trying to understand the disease.
It's the pathogenesis.
Exactly. Trying to understand what happens within the individual. And very little is being focused on these transmissions.
This is a MOOC with a large public involvement, and we spoke already about citizen science and the great example of the Cornell bird study. This with phones and with the ability to record and to make connections, this offers a great possibility for people to report on their interaction rates. So those people out there who are getting sick and in a large population, they can be really important agents for us as a community to understand how and when this is transmitted, because they can help us reconstruct those networks that they have, as opposed to us scientists looking at it from a top-down view. We can involve these people rather than looking at birds, though they're looking at their interactions over the last 2 weeks, which will be really helpful to us.
But you may never have even known who the person was who infected you.
Absolutely.
Because it was on the toilet door handle or something.
Sure. Yeah.
So
from toilet to bathroom.
There you go.
From coffees, we should be able to do this study from Thursday coffees.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And watch the spread through the building.
So I think that's a fantastic transition to the second question.